Craig, how are you? Doing well.
I saw this on LinkedIn. I thought I'd dial in. I was curious.
This is perfect. I'm glad. I'm hoping people hop in.
Okay, because I saw it on SearchFind. It didn't have it listed on SearchFind. I saw it on LinkedIn.
Yeah, it is. It's been a great tool, and it's amazing how willing to share that community is. We're in the deal side of things, and people don't share much at all. Yeah. I typically have it open so people can ask questions. I haven't had an issue with that in the past. I'm working on doing different topics so that people sort of at different phases of buying a business can move along. And today is going to be, I think, more of a beginner type, how does the process work? How long does it take? And we just kind of go. I go through some pieces of content that I have generally, but I would imagine more than half of this would be a conversation. Oh, absolutely. And vice versa. It's good to see your face. It's funny. The tavern is shut down, so we got to find a new place. Yeah. Hello, everyone. Noah, Tom, thanks for joining. Good morning. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Hey, Jeff, welcome. Hey, Jack, happy Friday, everyone. Thanks for coming. Randy's in the house. I'm going to wait a couple more minutes to see and let folks in. I'll say now, what I'm doing is weekly office hours to enable sort of more information to get shared and disseminated amongst folks. And I'll be doing them at different phases of the business buying process. So my plan today is to go over the business buying process in total. So it'll be a little bit earlier in the kind of process of getting a business bought than some of the other things that I've done that are more execution, letter of intent focused. However, I don't know how long that particular topic will take. So please use the chat window to drop any questions. I imagine that around 12:30 Eastern time, I'll be answering questions, and those who are bold enough to drop them will get questions answered. All right, so I'll give it another minute or two and then I'll get started. Okay. Um, admit, admit. Okay. I hope everybody would bear with me. I am learning some of this too. So thank you for coming today. And today, I mentioned earlier, but we're going to focus on an earlier part of the deal process and really scoping the entire process so we can sort of understand what people are embarking upon, what are the steps, what are the phases, what are the challenges, what are the needs, and and really it's almost like a business buying 101 is how I think this will go. And I welcome all questions. Please drop them in the chat. And with that being said, thank you for joining today. I'm Elliot Holland, founder and managing partner of Guardian Due Diligence. We focus on helping acquisition entrepreneurs, business buyers, and search funders to execute better transactions by both helping them through the search, evaluation, write up and offer phase. And also, we're often brought in to do commercial, financial, accounting due diligence, quality of earnings, cash proofs, etc. Many of you that are here I've spoken to before. Good seeing faces and names. Thank you for joining. Some folks are new. Thank you so much. Today, what I'll hop in to and talk about is the deal process. So I'm going to share my screen. Share. All right. Can everybody see this diagram? Thumbs up or I'm assuming people can. You guys will probably stop me if you couldn't. So here's the business buying process. So however you found out about buying a business, whether it was through professional pursuits, whether it was through a class, a Carl Allen, a Walker Dybel, there's plenty of classes out there, or whether you ran into it at business school through some entrepreneurship through acquisition class. Here's what the business buying process looks like. So there's, in my mind, 5 phases, and they're all pretty different in that the focus of each section is different. But here's what I'd say: other people have different breakdowns of this. What I would say, you buy a business to own the cash flow, just like you buy a share of GameStop to sell it for something higher. So a lot of folks think about the business acquisition process as I'm just here to acquire. And I would argue that people miss a lot of what's going on when they do that. So what's the first step? The first step is deal sourcing and evaluation. You're looking for high quality deals. You're looking for as many as you can. Now, the conundrum there is that everybody starts from scratch. You don't have anything. So you go to Biz Buy Sell, you go to website closers, you go to Quiet Light Brokerage, you find a couple of deals, you look at them, they're messy, they're hairy. You have that visceral feeling we all do of, gosh, what am I getting myself into? And then you have to make a decision on whether you're going to really batten down the hatches and create some amount of deal flow through some deal flow engine, or honestly give up. A lot of people stop at this phase, and I think this is the phase where you really separate those who are serious from those who aren't, because this is hard. I'm on Search Funder quite a bit, and people are constantly asking, like, what's the cheat code for deal sourcing? How do I scrape this? How do I email this? And I would commit to you, I've been doing this for 10 years, and I don't think there is a cheat code. There's probably some efficiencies here and there, but this is really about brute force. The next phase is preliminary negotiations. So you find a deal, you like it. How do you capture an offer to the seller? So the next phase is, depending on how you run it, most processes will have an indication of interest phase if it's a proper ran process. Some won't have an indication of interest, and you move straight to a letter of intent. But the way that you communicate your offer to a seller is through an indication of interest. So you write up one or get a template. It essentially says, I'm willing to pay between this price and this price for your business. The structure will look something like this. And you typically give the seller some concept of who you are and why you're uniquely qualified to buy and run his business or her business. The letter of intent is a bit more formal. Instead of a range of prices, it's a single price. You give the seller the structure from his perspective. A lot of people put that I'm going to buy it with this much debt and this much equity. You should understand that both debt and equity are cash to the seller. So you're telling them how much cash you're giving him or her at close, how much is in a note, how much is in rollover, et cetera, et cetera. And really, the reason this is preliminary negotiations is that you don't just send an offer and have it accepted. You send an offer and now you're negotiating a price. The next phase is another phase where the rubber hits the road. So due diligence. Um, and really the question that's getting answered here is can be varied. People come at this many different ways. My experience and my gut puts me in the place of there's only one thing you're looking to figure out in the due diligence process. And the more you're able to focus on that single thing, the better off you are. What is that thing, Elliot? The thing is this business worth the price I'm paying for it in the structure I wrote up in my letter of intent? It's a yes or no question. There's no perfect deals. There's no deal so terrible that at no price does the business create an environment where you would buy it. So it's really, is this thing that I'm saying I'm going to buy for $4 million worth $4 million? So what you go through, and we help many people do this. You go through the financials, you go through taxes, you go through bank statements, you go through asset lists, you go through customer lists, you go through a myriad of things. And what you're doing is checking to see if the things that were presented in the confidential information memorandum that you would have received here, whether things that you heard during the preliminary negotiations that made you want to continue in the process, you're figuring out whether those things are true. And so diligence is the trust but verify piece of this. And if I'm thinking of timeline, the beginning phase of deal sourcing and evaluation can last from a couple of months to a couple of years. Again, that's why getting your deal flow up is such an important piece of this mix. And we help a lot of searchers to get way more deal flow. And I'll get into that in a second. The preliminary negotiations become, you typically negotiate a letter of intent or indication of interest for a week to 4 weeks, just to give you a time frame. Due diligence typically lasts 30 to 90 days. I'm working on two projects right now where the searcher accepted a 30-day diligence period. I would not have advised that. I was brought in late. I don't encourage you guys to. This should be 90 days, and even better, this should be 90 days with an automatic extension of 30 or 60 if you produce a commitment letter from the bank or a purchase agreement. So I'm going to stop and see if I can. Did I lose anybody? Is everybody with me? Can I get a thumbs up on the screen or? Okay. Haven't lost anyone. Excellent. So let me. Okay. So due diligence is the next piece of the process. Now, let's assume you get to due diligence. You're paying $4 million for the business. And although you would adjust the EBITDA a bit differently than the seller presented it or the broker presented it, you come up to the conclusion that this business is actually worth the $4 million I'm paying. So you still have to complete the transaction. So now you're in the zone of a 30 to 90 page purchase agreement. Now you're finalizing deal structure. Now you have a lawyer involved. And really, if you think about it, the letter of intent is a letter that governs the way the buyer and the seller will act during a transaction for 90 to 100 days. The purchase agreement defines how a buyer and seller are going to act with each other for years, right? There's a seller note, that's a 5-year relationship. If you're buying someone's business, there's going to be sort of remnants of that person for a long time. So there's many things to negotiate here. I'll also get into a little bit deeper breakdown of this in the next example. And then this is the piece I think a lot of people forget. It's not a part of many of the business buying classes I've seen or conversations often, even on Search Funder, to be honest, around you buy the business. I'm using this example of a $4 million business, which I think is in the range of most people here. Now you have to figure out, how do I grow it? Because you get the return by not just purchasing a business with a lot of debt and a little bit of equity. You really start juicing the returns when you have a plan to improve the business, when your ideas or your effort being if you step in the business and become CEO, your advisor relationship if you decide to have somebody else run it. The better you are at this part, the better your return on investment will be and your ROI. So bringing in software that will help, formalizing a sales process, getting a company a better accountant or bookkeeper, changing up the marketing scheme, um, streamlining operations. All these things are elements of the deal and business buying process that you can consider when you're thinking about, how do I grow the business? So again, from a high level perspective, here are the parts of this. So deal sourcing and evaluation can last a couple of months to a couple of years. You have to find a deal worth pursuing. Preliminary negotiations, a couple of weeks. Due diligence is 30, I cringe when I say that, typically 60 to 120 days, but sometimes people get into situations where it's less. Negotiating the purchase agreement will be 2 to 4 weeks. It's a lot. It's a long document, and part of what you have to do to execute in this environment. And then post growth or post close growth planning, that's really for the length of your hold period. So some people want to hold forever, some people want to hold for a few years. So at a high level, this is how business acquisitions occur. I'm going to stop here again. I've seen a couple of people hop back in or hopped in. Are there any questions at this point? I'm going to go into a more detailed version of this. Noah Agata. So what or where are the best sources to find good deals? Um, Great question. So what's interesting about this process is what people talk about is closing, diligence, negotiating, but all of that comes from how good you can do deal sourcing. So what are good sources of deals? Noah, here's the challenge. The good sources of deals are almost anywhere where business owners are, hang out, post information. So there's hundreds of sites that list deals. My deal list my list of sites that list deals is over 160 different sites. You start with two or three, and then you start. No, number three sends you to number six. Number six sends you to number 10, and over time, you just have a lot of places to look for deals. Um, Getting to know business brokers. So there's thousands of business brokers in the United States. My list of business brokers is over 1,800. I started with one or two. So you got to keep building that. And then if you're working a proprietary search, then you have to figure out what is your engine to get in front of owners before a broker actually interacts with them, or in lieu of them going to a broker. So where are the good deals? They're almost hiding in plain sight. They're all over the place, but they're difficult to get to. We offer deal sourcing as part of our diligence as a service. And so one way to sort of jumpstart your process is to get some help from somebody who has more deal sources. The other way to do it is to just grind and continually sort of put the time in to go find good sources. And part of the challenge becomes, how much time can you invest? How efficiently can you get after it? Um, you didn't ask this, but I'm going to answer it. The other thing that happens is that it's very important that you're organized when you go get deals. when you start and you're looking at 5 or 10, it's easy in a spreadsheet and email. But I promise you, most searchers are looking at 100 plus deals. By the time you get to 75 or 90, if you're not organized in some sort of customer relationship management software, CRM software, deal software, you're going to be in a world of trouble. Noel, since a good question, can you share more examples of post growth plans, what you've seen work well, what has not gone so well? Yes, I can. Um, so let's go to the extremes. And I'm going to be very practical here and a little bit funny, but I think honest. Um, Everyone on this call is wicked smart and has some entrepreneurial juice or blood in their veins, because this isn't the easiest way to go get a buck. It's way easier to go sit on the job. Now, what ends up happening oftentimes is you overemphasize your own ability to be smarter than everybody in the arena that you're in. And so what happens on the bad side is that people go in, they think the financials are bad, they think the systems are bad, they're used to some Fortune 100 company they work for where everything had been laid out over centuries, and they want to go into a 15-year-old company, kick the seller out, tell the management team what to do, change everything, take the old name down, put their new fresh name up, um, change marketing, change sales, change, work from home arrangements, sort of come in with this plan that changes everything that was there before. That's the epitome of stupidity. It's, you must know that no matter what kind of business you're buying, the owner managed it in the best way that they could, and there's a lot of knowledge in the systems, the way the business is set up, the way the owner had it. And so, Noel, on the other side, what are good plans? So, what's typical in private equity, which is more my background in my 10 years in this arena, they call it a 100-day plan. And so most private equity firms will write one up. I can show you examples of ones that I've written. And what those plans typically do is two things. Good post-close growth plans mitigate risks that you found in due diligence. So you may have found that the sales organization was unorganized. And so part of your 100-day plan will be to organize, systemize, put in a customer relationship management software, and empower the current salespeople to be more efficient. You might find that the manufacturing facility has old equipment that's inefficient and not up to date, not able to do the things that the customers are asking for in today's marketplace. And so you might have a plan to, over the course of 3 years after I buy the business, I'm going to reinvest in new equipment and do those things. Then there's going to be interpersonal things. You're gonna promote some people because you're going to need more help. You're going to think through, how do I actually fortify the financial systems in this business, because now that I own it, I want to make sure I'm not losing my cash. So the bad ones think they know everything and want to do everything right away. The good ones are thoughtful, mitigate risk from due diligence, and help companies grow. One of the biggest things most of you are going to do that's going to be smart and low risk in the businesses that you buy will be increasing the attention and spend on marketing. You're going to take kind of old school businesses that used to advertise in the phone book, and you're going to put a digital spin on that. Those are the better plans. And so, Noel, we can talk more offline, but that's generally how I would think about that. Jeff, how do you think about market size given size of industry? For instance, I've got a target that has 6,500 total potential customers across the US, with 2,500 realistic large enough to use the service, and they currently have 600 of those 2,500 as current customers. Um, so this is a broad question about market size. I'm going to answer it, Jeff, but we may need to take this one offline because I have some follow-up questions, but I don't really want to open up this in this format since we're really talking about the deal process. Here's what I say: if the target has 6,500 potential customers, it's good that you actually know that. 2,500 realistic, large enough to use the service. So now you shrunk the 6,500 to 2,500, and you currently have 600 of those. So you have sort of a 4x capacity to grow. What I would be looking at is sort of how profitable would it be if you doubled in size and sort of took half the market? And are there tangential services and or products that you can sell to your current customers to increase the size of your total addressable market? The other thing is, if the market size is small, it doesn't mean the business isn't worth anything. You just may not pay a full multiple because you know that growth is muted by the limited size of the market. And again, if you want to follow up, I'll leave my email in the chat at the end, and you have it from the invite. Hopefully, you can reach out to me. How do you approach a situation where you receive an offering memo from a broker and have a lot of detailed questions about the business after reading through it? When is the appropriate when is it appropriate to ask to connect with the seller and ask those questions? How do you present yourself as a serious buyer to the broker so they're willing to continue the conversation? Aaron Katz, thank you for the question. Very good question. So what I love about this business, but what makes it challenging is that a lot of these questions don't have black and white answers. So, probably a third of the people in here I've had conversations with about specific deals. And there's been moments when they were strong negotiators that presented well, and moments when they were uncertain of things and didn't present as well. Here's the thing, and I've said this before, but I will say it every day until I die. You have to think about what are the incentives of the people you are talking to. And I think one of the biggest things that I was able to do, I think year 2 or 3, is you got to almost like take your I'm a buyer hat off, put it to the side, and put on your hat of, look, let me live inside of a broker's incentives, right? Because if you don't sort of understand the persona, you'll miss the nuance. Um, so how do you get more information? How do you know when you should talk to a seller? Well, honestly, I think the way to do that is as soon as you review the sim, I think you want to have a point of view on the business. And then I think what you want to do is you want to call the broker and ask the broker more questions than they actually can answer. And that is a process of just listing out an exorbitant list of questions. Now, you don't want to be so crazy that you come off as a schoolboy or a schoolgirl, but have a long list of questions, or a list of questions that's deeper than what the broker can answer. Like, hey, can you tell me somehow about the last 2 customers that they lost? Do you know anything about that? Something that a broker wouldn't have, but might be important. Then your next question is sort of, well, I need to get the question answered. Let me talk to the seller. At that point, the broker, if you put yourself in his shoes, he's got a couple of choices. He can put you on the phone with the seller if he thinks you're a serious buyer. He can tell you that you need to put an offer on the business to get to the seller, but you might say you're not interested and he just pushed away a buyer. He can say, pound sand, I don't think you're serious, get out of here, scram, right? The way that a broker is thinking is he gets a small retainer and a big check that's a percentage of the deal when it closes. The more that you convey yourself as serious, the more you convey yourself in a formulaic way, the more that even if you guys are learning the process, the more that you assert yourself as sort of masters of your process, and remind yourself that you are the Brinks truck showing up with the money. If you keep that mentality, I think you'll be in a good situation. Your second question about how do you present yourself as a serious buyer? So let me tell you how I've seen people completely fail, and let me tell you how I've seen people do really well. So, all right, let's say you're a UFC fighter, or you like do mixed martial arts, and you're in a bar having drinks, and a guy keeps pushing you, knocking into you, spilling stuff on you, right? And you're a trained fighter. You can put somebody in their back in any position. You don't have to say a whole lot when you know what you're doing to get somebody off your back. A person like that will say one thing, hey, you need to stop that. And that'll be the end. The person who's scared or not as convincing will have a long diatribe of all the reasons why you need to, this and that and this. And I use these analogies because I think we understand other situations. So when you get into a conversation with the broker, I've heard people just give me some diatribe about all these Fortune 500 CEOs they have in their capital stack, all these rich guys they know. Capital's not an issue. I'm a millionaire. I'm a billionaire. My parents have oil money, blah, 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 blah. And it smells like bull junk. Too much. The people who I've seen do this very successfully are sort of very specific with, hey, I have a group of high net worth individuals. I have a commitment letter from an SBA bank for more money than this deal will cost. I have 2 or 3 family offices that are backing me. I am looking to do a deal this year. And you be quiet. I think the more you speak sometimes in this game, the less convincing you are. These brokers have seen it all. Be convincing. I hope I answered your question, Aaron. If not, send me an email and I can expound more. Nathaniel Jensen, can you share some trends or themes from the trenches to help spot seller tricks or things to look out for in DD? Nathaniel, give me a second. I absolutely can, but I think if I go there, I'll be there for a while. So let me come back to that. Nathaniel, do me a favor. In 10 minutes, can you pop up again and ask the question again? I think I should end with that because those stories are really good. Yep, thank you. Okay. I might be back to the one question. Okay. I look like I'm actually okay. Cool. Um 2 things. So before I get into this, which is an amazing question, I want to show you guys one other thing. Let me get this up. Put this down. Okay, I've taken the different steps that I talked about just a second ago, and I put them into this more expounded one pager. And really, what this is meant to do is to show what are the challenges in each step, and then what is it, how can you actually get benefit and value from working with a deal partner or a due diligence firm or a firm like ours that kind of helps with the deal process. So I'm going to go into this quickly and then I'll get back into questions. We've all talked about it. So deal sourcing and evaluation, very difficult. A lot of people end up looking at 5 to 10 deals per month, less than 60 deals a year. They're still refining the deal criteria, dealing with inaccuracy of information, time wasted, all of that. We can help you get to a lot more deals far quicker. We have a huge database of sources, of brokers, of bankers, over 1,800 brokers, 2,200 lower middle market investment banks, over 150 private bankers. We have an amazing database to help you get deals. And I would tell you that the quality of the deal you're going to find is directly correlated to how many deals you look at. And over 10 years of doing this, I can tell you that's the truth. When it comes to negotiations, I think a lot of people are unfamiliar with this piece. You have a letter of intent or an indication of interest you don't trust. We have documents that can help you through all of that. We've seen the situations that people put you in with brokers and buyers and sellers, and so we can give you some quick advice on the process. Due diligence. Look, due diligence is tough, and even tougher when you're dealing with a accountant for the first time and trying to figure out how to trust somebody to watch over your money. What is the right time frame to review? And when is diligence done? It's such a weird thing because the item you do after diligence is you buy $1 million business. And so anything that it takes to get comfortable with that you have to do during your diligence period, but you also have to realize there's a point when diligence is done and it's time to go get the docs finalized. And so I'll stop here for sort of how Guardian helps, but we have experts that manage your diligence. We have the best proven CPAs that we've worked with in the past 10 years, so you don't have to go through that vetting process. We have knowledge of how to leverage diligence findings to reduce purchase price. On average, we're saving searchers about $100,000 on purchase price just by finding things in diligence they didn't see, and then helping our clients negotiate it down. And we'll let you know when you've done sufficient diligence because we're very focused on, is the business worth what you're paying for it? I wanted to show you guys this because um, I've been in these trenches. I've seen these challenges. I know what it's like to be a bit uncertain going into a difficult sourcing process, a difficult negotiation process. And all I'm saying is if you need some help, please let us know. You can actually book time on my website. Let me go back to the chat. Rich, you were right. I didn't see this. I'll make it larger next time. Aaron, Nathaniel Jensen. Knowing what you know now, what 3 tips would you give new self-funded searchers? That's a great question. Um, I'm just thinking through what's good advice to a self-funded searcher. I think the first piece of advice is to understand your budget and how long it will last you. Um, you don't want to be in a position as a self-funded searcher where you quit your job, you give yourself 9 months. Now you're 3 months from the end of your cash flow period, and now you're looking to close any deal that you see because you don't want to go back to corporate America. You have to manage your budget effectively, which oftentimes means you're the one doing menial stuff that may be kind of work you did 10 years previous, but you have to do it in this capacity because you don't have the money to go pay somebody else to do it. So the first thing I would say for a self-funded searcher is to manage your budget. The second thing, I think you have to consider what are the ways to be more efficient than the funded guys. Because at the end of the day, everybody's competing. The people who I think have impressed me the most over the past couple of years within Guardian have taken their own professional work that they do. Um, I've seen digital marketers buy landscaping companies, throw on digital marketing, and the thing goes gangbusters. I've seen IT folks buy SaaS software companies, increase the quality of the software, and off to the races. I've seen people take advantage of their unfair advantage in the marketplace and leverage it. So as a self-funded searcher, you have to be scrappier than the rest. You're not going to have the money to go get a market study. You're not going to have necessarily the time to look at as many deals. You may have a full-time or part-time job while you're doing this, so you have to be efficient. So first is manage your budget. Second is manage your efficiency. The third thing I would advise self-funded searchers to do is to find a good cost-effective set of advisors and do that while you're searching. Because here's the challenge, and I've been in it. As a self-funded searcher, sometimes the best deal you're going to see in the year comes earlier than you think. You're thinking grinding, grinding, grinding. Hopefully by September I get a good deal, and the Michael Jordan of deals shows up 30 days in, right? And so now you have this deal, you're negotiating letters of intent, financial modeling, and now you're trying to look for a lawyer and an accountant, or an accountant and a lawyer. And you're calling people, you can't get a quote. You're calling people, they can hear your anxiety and desperateness on the phone, and their pricing will reflect that. Um, the seller will recognize that. Um, and so I would advise you to watch your budget, be efficient, and be thinking about your sort of diligence team as you go along, because it's not as easy to call your 24 search fund investor guys and ask for an accountant and a lawyer. When you're self-funded, you need to pay a more reasonable fee most times, and you're going to have to spend your own time figuring out who those people are, where they are, etc. Okay, I am now going to go into some due diligence stories. Okay, hold on, let me pull up a file. So this is a download on my website if you want to go pull it up. Due diligence war stories. So these are just stories of things that I've gone through during my 10 years looking at deals. Hopefully the size is okay. I'll blow it up a little bit more. Actually, you can't even see the full. Here's how I'm going to do this. I would imagine some of you guys have the due diligence war stories. Are there any particular stories that anyone's seen that they want more information on, or some of these here? If I don't hear anything in 20, 30 seconds, I will just hop into a couple and talk about them. Okay. Okay. Maybe not necessarily stories, just common things sellers try to pull. So, Nathaniel, these are great questions. Here's the reality. And if you listen to any of my podcasts, you've heard me say this. The trouble with diligence and why this is so hard is that it's not like buying or selling a car, where if the person gets you to believe that the engine and transmission are good and they're not, you pay one time sort of the mistake that you missed in diligence. So you missed $1,000 item, you have $1,000 bill, you can handle it. When you're buying a business, sort of every dollar of profit that the seller or the broker can convince you is there that isn't there, you're not paying them one times that, you're paying them 3 to 6 times that oversight. So the seller and broker have the highest time or the highest motivation probably at any time in their life to tell a story. And you need to be aware of that. So what do brokers and sellers try to do generally? They try to hide their financials. They try to show you something in Excel that's pretty. They want to say that it's right out of QuickBooks or right out of Peachtree software, and it's not. They want to show you how good 2019 was and 2020 is having some issue. They're converting from cash to accrual. They're waiting on their accountant. Anything of that situation. Yeah, Randy, that's awesome. I will tell that story. And Jack was asking about four. Let me say a couple general things and then I'll go into these situations. So, one of the things to look for is soon after you start this process, you will know what the headers on QuickBooks exports look like. You'll be able to draw it in your sleep 6 months into this. You'll be able to see what they look like when they're printed on PDF, and you'll see what they look like when they're in Excel. If you get financials that don't have that QuickBooks header, don't have the the header in the PDF, don't believe them. Don't even look at them. I would encourage you to go get the real data. What else do seller and brokers do? Here's the thing, and this is where we go really hard on diligence. There are ways to hide expenses on your balance sheet, and people do it a lot in inventory and in capital expenditures. So if you're not knowledgeable about how the income statement and the balance sheet work, it's important to get advisors like myself involved so you can understand. Let's say I spend uh, $20,000 to modify a bunch of widgets that I have in my inventory, and because I don't want to make it an expense, I capitalize it uh, and throw it on the balance sheet. And people do things like that, expenses as inventory or capex. You just got to watch it. The third thing I think brokers and sellers do quite a bit, they'll tell you things that are reasonable that when you start getting into the mix aren't true, and they'll have impacts on EBITDA that you have to back out. One of the main ones I hear all the time is there's always like these absentee owners that still live in the same city as the business and still do stuff in the business. But they're absentee, they don't work in the business, add their full salary back, do the multiple, you'll be fine. You really need to check and see if that person is really absentee. There are a couple ways to do that. And if you get with an advisor that knows how to do that, then you'll be able to tease that out. Nathaniel, I hope I answered that question. I'm going to go into number 4. Jack asked, and also Randy's suggestion. Cool. Number 4, seller and seller's wife keeping a related business that I looked at a durable medical equipment company down in Dallas, Texas. It was an amazing business run by one of the best female entrepreneurs I've ever met. She was both nice and qualified, and put an offer on the business. Flew down to Dallas to check out the business. We had a full day of meetings. Went to dinner at Papados. Had a great dinner. We had already submitted a letter of intent. We go back home, excited about the business, ready to sort of start putting together a teaser to go get financing. And when we got back, we sent the seller a purchase agreement. And I'm going to tell you guys this because you need to know it. You find out what's real about the business during financial due diligence. The numbers tell you the story. The real story is in the numbers. The legal document protects your behind. And the legal document is 60 to 90 pages because it forces the seller to promise certain things that are mission critical for you to feel comfortable buying the business. Things that seem benign or small that are mission critical. So, Jack, here's what happened. We sent her a purchase agreement that had a non-compete. The non-compete said, you shall not compete in the durable medical equipment business within 100 miles of Dallas, Texas. We get a call, and she's ranting and raving about, this. Her husband has a business. It's not really durable medical equipment, but it's similar. But she doesn't spend any time in it. Her husband, that's his little tinker toy thing he does on nights and weekends. But can we carve it out of the non-compete? And that's when you find out bull junk, right? And the reason you find it out then and not sooner is now the seller has to actually bet on the stories that they're telling. So if she signs a non-compete that says she can't compete in durable medical equipment and her husband has a durable medical equipment business, then you're going to take her to court for working in that business, and it's going to disrupt her business. She's not willing to sign it, so she tells you. What stinks is you wish you would have known that day one. But the thing that protected you in that process was the legal document that had the non-compete that the seller couldn't sign because they were involved in a side business. And no matter what they tell you about they're not working in it, they're not working in it. You have to understand if you buy a business from a seller, they no longer have an equity interest in it. Their partner that has the business, every dollar that they put through that is going to get them money back. You should know that their knowledge is going to be used in that business. And because they have all the sales relationships with the business you just bought, the likelihood that they steal your business is so high. Don't be a fool. Jack, you're talking about how to discover these things earlier. Good question. So this is finesse, and look, people are going to have different opinions on this. Let me see if I can expand this. I'm still learning, guys, so bear with me, okay? Um, Most people think about efficiency first. How can I talk to 100 sellers? How can I send 1,000 emails? How can I send 10,000 mailers? When you're considering buying a business, I wouldn't think about efficiency. So most people want to go pop in on a seller, have a 2-hour meeting, answer your 20 questions on your clipboard, go back home, and think that you know what's going on. I would argue that the more time you spend with the seller, the more that you'll know about the business. But you have to sort of get the person outside of their I'm being interviewed mood. If I show up, look, Randy's on here. Randy has a business. If I show up and I'm looking to buy Randy's business, I'm like, hey Randy, how many clients do you have? Okay. How many did you have last year? Okay. Churn. What's your churn rate? Okay. Uh, why is the budget so high for donations? And I'm going through this checklist. The reaction of the seller is going to be you're quizzing me. You're quizzing me. You're going to get quiz answers, right? What you want to do is spend a lot of time with the person. You want to go see them. You want to hang out. You want to have dinner. You want to wake up in the morning and have some breakfast. You want to chit chat. You want to sit in their office. You want to ask them strategic questions. The way that you learn things sooner, in my opinion, and it's not fail safe, but it's directional, is you have enough conversations where a person has a chance to tell you something that's a little wonky without fear of it being the only data point and you jetting or being scared. It's similar to like if you met a person who you wanted to be a mentor of yours and you wanted to get to know them. If you spend 10 minutes and just hit the highlights and leave, you haven't really given the person enough information to really evaluate who you are. When you're talking to a seller, you want to ask them what their fears are. You want to ask them what are they doing after they sell the business. You want to understand their motivations. You want to get past the superficial. And I encourage you to make sure when you're visiting these companies, make it overnight. The reason being, the first day a seller sees you, meets you, their guard's going to be up. I've done this hundreds of times. The guard's going to be up, which means you're not really getting real data. It's almost like the stuff you would tell somebody on the first date. You're not really going to get the good stuff. I'm not saying the next day is full transparency, but I would argue that the best data I've gotten on most companies was the second day after the person met me, slept, talked to their significant other, got back up, spend the time. That was a long answer, forgive me, but I just see a lot of people flubbing that up. Randy had a really good reminder. Thank you. You guys are all looking at deals on websites. And I bet you, as soon as you find a deal and inquire to the broker, the first thing that they say is, hey, I'm going to send it to you, but we just got a LOI 4 days ago, 3 days ago. So I really need you, if you like this, to send the offer in like tomorrow, maybe Monday, look at it over the weekend. Because if not, I'm going to have to give it to the other guy. And, I like you. And I want you to win. 90% of the time, that's bull junk, right? But how do you know? If you see a listing today, so today is January 2021. If you see a listing and the last set of financials they show you are January 2020, that deal is stale. That broker put it up a year ago. Nobody was interested. You pushed harder on your deal flow. You found it. The likelihood that that deal has a lot of people looking at it, very low. The other place you see it is when you look at the SIM, the confidential information memorandum. So if they have, instead of numbers, real numbers for 2020, they have projections. The projections tell you when the book was written. If the book was written a long time ago, the likelihood that there's somebody else looking at it is lower. Now, I don't want you guys going out and telling brokers that they're BSing and missing deals off of that point only. But I would say it's a very good way to think about um, the staleness of the deal, the likelihood you're actually in an auction. Brokers are good, particularly with new buyers, and creating this fear of losing the deal, and you find one you like, and oh my gosh, please, go meditate, settle down, think about think about a deal that had nobody looking at it for a year or two, and now it has a bunch of people looking at it the same time you looked at it. Very unlikely. I'm looking at Rich. My biggest challenge is deal flow and a geographically constrained search. Any ideas on ways to improve flow? Um, so I'm winding this up. I'm not able to go over today. So I'm gonna answer Rich's question. I hope you've read James Sharp's story out of HBS. And I'm not saying it just because he's an HBS guy. I think he's written one of the more comprehensive descriptions of what it's like to have a geographically constrained search and to not want to move. He was in Boston. He wanted to stay in Boston. His family was in Boston. And so his search was Boston based. It took him longer to find a deal he liked. It took more work. It took more thoughtfulness. It took pivoting his deal sourcing strategy, but he got it. He won. He bought his business. He did well. I wish there was a magic wand for deal sourcing, guys. We'd all be rich. Deal sourcing is hard. So what I would say for a geographically constrained area, what you need to do is not just talk to brokers that are in that area, but talk to brokers who represent deals in that area. When you look at BizBuySell, BizQuest, Axial, wherever you're looking, there may be a broker in Florida that has a deal in West Virginia. So you can't just look at the brokers that reside in the place where you want to find the deal. You need to look at brokers that actually have deals in that area. The other thing about geographically based searches is you should be able to have some insight through relationships of, Chamber of Commerce, the ability to walk into a business and see if the owner's there and talk to him. I mean, I've walked into durable medical companies and just went and talked to the owner who was in the back. You need to be scrappier. The more narrow your search, the more scrappy you're going to have to be successful. I fundamentally believe that the quality of the deals people get are completely a function of how many deals they look at. And I'm not saying there aren't outliers. I'm saying if you plotted the data, the number of deals people look at would be the biggest determinant of how good of a deal they close. So you got to get in front of a lot. I think telling people that you're looking for it, using your LinkedIn to look for it, just get scrappy. I think sometimes we're so, how would I say, we have all these tools at our disposal, but there's just hesitance to use them because either you don't want to be too messy and kind of bother people, you don't want to come off as hungry or thirsty, you don't want to. If you think about this job, it's a sales job essentially, which is why I encourage you to put your brokers and your deals into a customer relationship management software like a Salesforce or one that's better for deals. You're selling sellers that you're the best buyer. So get out there and tell your story and get better at telling your story and get your story tight so that a seller's interested. Find commonalities with the seller. Put yourself out there. I think you can do it. James Sharp did it. He wrote a lot about it. I think if you read that, you'll be in a good place. I'm going to wrap up. I am amazed at how many people came this week. Thank you so much. I will do this every week, but next week I'm on vacation. Every once in a while, I do something called vacation. So I'll be back in 2 weeks. Please email me if you have any questions. And what I will offer you is that we recently in 2021 started offering Diligence as a service, and also have some new offerings on our website. I encourage you to go check it out. The Diligence as a service has deal sourcing in it. So a lot of people were asking about deal sourcing. You can actually get help through that service. I would encourage you to consider it. We've signed up quite a few people on that service that are having a really, really, really good experience. So if you need references or whatever, I can do that. I see all your thank yous. You're very welcome. I hope you all have an amazing weekend. And don't be shy if you need something from me. I guess what I'll do is, I think you guys all have my stuff, but I'll put, oops, I wanted to go to everyone. Check out the services. We switched those up for 2021. I think there may be some things that are interesting there for you. And if you need to get to me, that's my email address. Thank you, everyone. Have an amazing weekend, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Very welcome. Thank you. Thanks for coming.